Thank you, Allison, for kicking us off. I'm sorry that you guys can't see us yet. We're working on just a technical difficulty. The woman who just introduced the webinar is Allison Spees. She is our brilliant marketing mind behind both the webinar and then any of the other Hawkeye collateral, events, social media that you might see. And while you can't see us at this moment, my name is Shelly Benyon. I'm the general manager for Hawkeye Industries, and we are joined, Allison and I are joined by our colleagues, Jody and Rob, who I'll introduce a little bit more in depth here in a moment. But I wanted to just introduce myself and introduce you to Hawkeye Industries. You're here, so you must know our name. Hopefully you know a little bit about us. We have the tremendous opportunity to serve and touch many markets. We've got some of them up there on the screen for you to see. And we really just have such a great time being able to connect with customers along an array of industries, and working with Duratec, Aquabuff, and Styrosafe. Those are our three product lines across those various industries. So the industry you're here for today is marine construction. It is certainly a substantial portion of what our products are used for. Rob, who happens to be based down in Florida, has lots of stories of marine construction and repair. So we'll talk about some of those today, and we'll share some tips and tricks. But what we're hoping to do today is to certainly introduce you or familiarize you with Duratec or with Hawkeye Industries a little bit more. Make sure you know who we are as your resources so that you can reach out to us, ask for support, get product recommendations, and then answer any questions that you might have about marine construction. So we're going to go through all of our product lines as they interface with marine construction. So Duratec, which is surface coatings, Aquabuff, which are polishes and compounds, and Styrosafe, which is our EPS resin and primer. So we're going to touch on every single one of those. But first, let me just introduce you digitally for the moment to my colleagues. Allison, if you put up our slide. Jody, Rob, and I are strategically placed all throughout the country so that we are positioned and ready to travel and serve and support our distribution partners and our end use customers as best as we can. So you can see Jody there on the left. Jody covers the Western United States and Canada. Rob is down kind of in the central southeast, and I am up in the central north and northeast, including up into Canada and our international customers. So at the very end of our presentation, we'll have our contact information. This webinar is being recorded, as I'm sure you all got the warning. So you can come back to it as a resource, both for information and also to make sure you can find us and get some support and some assistance. So we're going to go through our product lines, as I mentioned. At the end, we do have a Q&A open time session. So as questions come up, this is what we love. We love questions on the phone. We love questions via email. We love questions in person. Please be thinking about what questions or what issues or what challenges you've had in your process or your customers have had in your process, and then let us know how we can help you with those. And we'll try to save the bulk of our time for Q&A. Let's see, Allison's telling me to try my camera. Let me see if I can get that to work. Hello, everyone. Yay. All right. So a little bit about Duratec and our surface coatings, our surface technology. We have several different uses and applications. We'll talk about some of them today in terms of how they pair with marine construction and repair. But, you know, Duratec was kind of founded and started and got its footing in the plug and pattern world. And so We're certainly used in the marine industry for that. We're also used in a variety of different industries as well. So plug and pattern building, mold resurfacing, repair. Obviously, we're here today for marine production, repair, construction, all of that lovely. And then also we have a line of primers and top coats that are used for finished parts. So we kind of run the gamut. Like I said before, we touch a lot of industries, and Jody and Rob have tremendous industry and background experience kind of touching all of those. So maybe marine construction is new to you. Maybe you're traditionally doing something else. Our team is here to support you all across the board, and certainly through the Duratec and AquaBuff and SteraSafe line of products. So you're here for marine construction. Let's jump in and let's get to know what Duratec, AquaBuff, and SteraSafe products are out there, when you should be using them. And then we'll go through a couple of tips and tricks. And then, like I said, we'll have some time for Q&A. So I'm going to pass this over to my colleague, Jody, and he's going to talk first about some of our traditional primers for marine use. Jody? Can you unmute yourself?
There we go. Sorry about that. I'm in the middle of nowhere on a trip at the moment, and using my phone here as from this meeting. So I apologize. So anyways, on the screen here, there's the 707002 sanding primer and the 1799-006. Those are probably two of our most popular items as primers. They're readily available. You can pick those up numerous places, normally in stock because they're so popular. So a lot of places use them. They're very user-friendly. The polyester version, the 002, it is a multi-purpose type product. If you needed one product to fit many different applications for, like it says, easy sanding, rapid build, low porosity, you're going to get that in this product. It can also be because it's called a surface primer, you've got the option of also just sanding and polishing this and using it for quick one-off molds or plugs or low volume parts. It's not going to hold its gloss like a top coat would, but it's going to do a good job at holding its gloss, and you can make several parts, and it's going to be much easier and quicker to process through your shop. So that's a really good option there. And sanding and polishing it, you can take it to 600 or 800. I usually take it to 600, buff it with our 1000 AquaBuff, and you'll get a pretty darn good gloss on it. You don't have to sand it any more than that. You can, but again, the gloss is a bit limited, so you're not going to get that high gloss. The 1799-006 product, that is the vinyl ester version. So it will do everything that the 707-002 polyester version will do, but it will do each thing just a little bit better. The physical properties are better. The water resistance is better. Just the general durability is better. And again, both of these products are epoxy compatible. So they can be used in mold with epoxy, or they can be post applied to the epoxy. As long as the products are fully cured, you're good to go. So that's a really good option if you're going to switch back and forth with epoxy tooling or epoxy parts. People will use these in mold if they're infusing epoxy parts or carbon fiber parts, even if they're going to be painted, sanded and painted later. So you've got a lot of options on that front. It's not just for making parts, but you can also, or post-applying and making plugs, but you can make parts with it. Now, the additional benefit of the vinyl ester version is that it also works as a barrier coat below the water line. So if you want additional protection, you can use this below the water line, either in mold or post-applied in a refinish type application, so you can get a good good water barrier there. So each of these can be sanded and polished again, and do a really adequate job. Now, the difference you're going to see in handling between the two, because the physical properties of the vinyl ester version are a bit better, it will be slightly tougher to sand. You won't notice that if you're not sanding them side by side, but side by side, you'll say, yeah, the vinyl ester is a little tougher to sand. And with both of them, the longer you wait to sand it, the more difficult it will be to sand. But that's a brief overview of those two products and what your options are.
Perfect, Jody. Thank you. And one of the things that I wanted to just add is, we're trying to make this a bit of a digest for you, for those of you here in attendance with us. So as Jody said, that's a brief overview. We'll talk about where to find additional resources for all of the products that we reference and more. Jody, one question that I have for you is I know Allison's got a fantastic slide for us about the difference between polyester and vinyl ester, but you mentioned that they're epoxy compatible, polyester, vinyl ester compatible. What would be a key factor in choosing one of these over the other for a pattern, let's say?
For a pattern? Mm-hmm. If you wanted higher heat distortion temperatures, the polyester version goes to about 200 F. The vinyl ester version goes to about 300 F. So there's your big determination right there. If these parts are going to be post-cured at a higher temperature, epoxy parts, things like that, you're probably going to need to go with the vinyl ester for that post-cure compatibility. So that's the big difference there. In many other ways, they're interchangeable, but that's the big one that might determine which one you need to go with.
Gotcha. Wonderful. Thank you. Would you just tell us next a little bit about some of the top coats that follow those primers if someone wants to take a plug or a pattern up to the next? I think Allison's got a couple of choices for us to look at too.
Yeah, and what these are, they're similar to gel coat, only these are designed to spray and cure, level and flow like a paint. They give a very high gloss right to begin with. So you're not trying to sand out a bunch of orange peel or other defects in the surface. If you've got a sprayer that can do a good job, as in an employee that can spray it, not every part can be sprayed perfectly. So you might have some places that are a little rougher, but these will cure, air cure, no wax added, to a very high gloss. You can cut down on your sanding, the man hours involved in that, cost of sanding materials dramatically, because depending on the exact shape of the part, you can frequently start with 600 or 800, and I always try 800 grit, knock it down and polish it right from there. Sometimes you might need to go to 15 or to 1000 or 1200 grit sandpaper. I don't normally need to go that far, but you might need to in some applications. These products, and again, they're similar, one being a vinyl ester version, one being the polyester version. The temperature difference in the two, the ability to withstand that temperature in repeated cycles. So again, if you've got the vinyl ester primer underneath this, you're using it for a top coat, you're going to go with the 1902-045 as the top coat, and that's going to give you an excellent surface on your part. The 902-046 is going to be a little bit easier to sand, a little bit easier to work with. It will probably work in about 90% of the applications, unless you've got some specific things again. But again, both of these will give you a high gloss finish. There are times when people don't even sand these or polish them. They just spray them and use that as their mold surface, because maybe the part's going to be sanded and polished later, or sanded and painted later, and they don't need a 100% perfect finish on the part. So you get a lot of options with those two products.
Yeah. But you can take both of these products up to what most people in the industry would consider Class A.
Yes.
Yeah.
And very easily and rapidly. Far easier than what you can do with a typical gel coat type products. That's where the time savings and the material savings comes into play, because you can rapidly get an excellent surface on these, not the 2 weeks of sanding on orange peeled gel coat with several $100s worth of sandpaper laying on the floor.
Decoration.
Yes.
Expensive decoration. Perfect. I know we'll have questions likely come up, and I'll save one of mine for later when we have Q&A time. There are 2 more products that Jody's going to talk to us about. And Jody, we're going to kind of pair the 904001 between you, Rob, and I. So if you want to just tell us a little bit about StyroSafe and the advantages there.
Okay, with StyroSafe, it's a EPS and XPS compatible resin system that can be used. So if somebody needs to make a mock-up of something, you can be using a low-cost EPS foam and then use this resin to make a shell on it and make your tooling. Or some people even make the part that way. The foam is left inside and your part, a lot of decorative or architectural type features are done that way. The foam adds a little bit of stiffness and rigidity to it. So whatever your application is there, whether it's tooling or not, it's an easy to use resin that's compatible with a lot of different surfaces, and all other resin systems are compatible with it. So you can use other typical polyester or vinyl ester type coatings on top of it.
On top of the StyroSafe, you're saying? On
top of the StyroSafe. It has a sister product, the StyroShield primer, that can be used together or independently for different purposes. If you need to sand on it, the primer's better. If you're going to make a shape that needs some structure, the resin is better.
Yeah.
Now, switching over to the 904-001, the clear high gloss additive, this product is extremely useful, not only with standard gel coats to allow them to level flow, spray like a paint, and cure to a high gloss. With some people leave it that way. Again, if they're able to do a really good spray job, they can just leave that surface, and some people do. Other people want to sand that surface, and it's not hard to sand. So if you're not as good with the gun, or your hose drags through it, or a bird falls in it, or your cat walks through it, you've got the option to sand it out and redo it and get those footprints out of there, or the feathers. So anyways, and all those things happen. So we're well aware of that. So that product will work well in gel coat. It is also compatible with our other primers and top coats and everything else, and it will do the same thing for those products. You can blend it in. If you have one of our primers and you say, hey, our surface primer works great for what we want to do, but we want a little more gloss on that for the parts that we're going to make, because we're going to make 5 or 6 or 7 parts off this mold, and we want it to retain a little better gloss, but we don't want to go all the way to a top coat. You can add the 904-001 to one of our primers, and now you've increased the gloss a bit. There's no right or wrong ratio. You can add as much or as little as you want. So if you want 5%, that's good for your application. If
we're
you
talking
get good results,
specifically adding it to the Duratec, like you can add whatever ratio you want to the Duratec.
Yes.
Okay.
And whatever you want to Duratec, whatever fulfills your need. So you don't have to worry about that. Going back to gel coat, we typically recommend 50-50 for a full cure, tack-free cure. It doesn't always need to be that much, but with new low emission gel coats, they don't surface cure as well. So 50-50 is a safe ratio. You don't always need to go to 50-50 if you're building up layers of it. You can add less of the 001. And then if you want that high gloss, fully cured surface in the end, you can go to the 50-50 for the final pass.
Well, and we're going to spend a little bit more time too on the 904001 and gel coat as a gel coat additive, because it's certainly the most popular way that that product is used, and can create a lot of questions for folks. Jody and I were just part of why we're both in our cars is we just happened to visit with a customer who was making a pattern and opted to add just a small amount of the 904001 high gloss additive into their Duratec 707002, which is that polyester primer Jody mentioned before. And they added, Jody, maybe 5%?
Right.
Maybe just a splash. And it really helped. They had a pretty complicated plug, and it really helped kind of cover those angles and level and flow in all of those geometries. And then it gave them the slightest amount of shine. They didn't really want a lot of gloss, but it gave them just a slight advantage that way. So it can be a real useful tool, both, as Jody said, on your primer side, or to make a pseudo top coat out of your primer, and then as well in the gel coat, like we'll talk about in just a moment.
And that was on top of an epoxy tooling paste.
Yes. Yeah. Not an easy surface to make nice and smooth and beautiful.
Yeah. And this was a standard procedure for this customer. They use our products consistently with excellent results in their tooling process. So we were just in there for a little training session on things to make life even easier for them. So we gave them some other options on products to try and some methods.
So I see that we have one question on 904001. I'm going to hold it. So if that's your question, Brian, I'm going to come back to you. Don't worry. We're going to get to that question in just a second. But first, we're going to jump over to Rob, because the question is going to tie in with what Rob's going to talk about, some of the products that are used on the interior and exterior portion of marine construction. Thanks for your insight, Jody. Hi, Rob.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. So what we're going to talk about now is patch and repair. If you're repairing holes that need to be taken care of, a lot of times what we get, and as you can see on your screen, we've got products that are above the waterline and products that go below the waterline. Anytime you're building or repairing anything that you want to put below the waterline, you always want to go with the vinyl ester. And that can start with, depending on the seriousness of the repairs that you're doing. A lot of times we'll see people come in and they've got to take the bottom paint, strip the bottom paint off the boat. And what you find is that you see a lot of blisters that have built up underneath there. So you've got to break them out. Usually you take a Dremel, grind that back down, usually right back into the glass. And then you can come back. It's not on the screen, but we have what we call a mold repair putty. It is a vinyl ester product that you can fill those holes in, come back, sand that out, come back on top of that once everything is sanded and faired out, and come back with the vinyl ester primer. And you'd prime that part and get it ready, sand it. Again, 400, 600, get it ready for being gel coated. And again, where the 904001 comes in, because you do a 50-50 blend, or at least a 30 minimum with your gel coat to get that good hard finish, shine, air cure product that's going to be completely tack free to come back and complete that job. But anything that's below the waterline, like we said, and if you've got a lot of distortion on that part, you've got a lot of highs and lows that you need to block sand out. The 1799052 is a high build fairing primer made with vinyl ester. So again, made to go below the waterline, and you block sand that out, smooth it out, and you're ready to go again. Compatible with any gel coat that's out there with the high gloss additive in there. So no wax PBAs needed on the finish on this. You don't have to cover it back up. Don't need to be adding surfacing agent to any of these products. They're already air cure products, so they're ready to go.
So Rob, I know that 614079, the product that's in the upper left-hand portion of everyone's screen, is a quick leveling top coat. This product originated as a bilge coating. It was designed for that. It's highly chemical resistant for that area. But you've actually seen a lot of growth and use of this product in multiple areas.
She froze up. We've seen this product, which is a quick leveling top coat. And what that means is I don't know if I lost you or not there, but again, I've even got some guys building some smaller boats with a roll top deck. They're spraying it on top of the decks, using it in place of an interior gel coat. But mainly it's the finish. I've got people using it on the inside of consoles just to give it that finished look. And it is an extremely, extremely high gloss product. It actually, once it's cured, it still looks like it's wet. It's got that much of a shine to it. Yeah. And very little sanding is needed with that. It usually comes right off the gun. And if you spray it correctly, you take your time with it, you may not even have to go back and sand to it. It comes out that smooth. So we are starting to see a lot of people make the change over to this, especially if you want that interior finished look on your parts. Really great product to look at. And depending on the color, we can even color match some of the colors on that, usually with the pastel colors, but match it up so it can match up to whatever you're looking to do with that product.
Oh, I've managed to mute myself here. So I want to jump into, we're gonna talk a little bit about 1799-052 again, and 1799-006, which are the two primers that we often associate for marine construction below the waterline. But Rob, you know better than anybody on our team that 904-001 is a hot topic. High gloss additive is a hot topic. So if you've joined our call specifically to talk about high gloss additive, you're not the only one. Brian had asked a question, so I'm just going to jump into this. I'll start first by saying, Jody mentioned it, you mentioned it as well, that we typically recommend a 50-50 blend of Duratec high gloss additive and the customer's gel coat of choice. When is that different? Why is that different? And when and where do wax and PVA come into play?
With the high gloss, well, if you're going to use less than 50%, a lot of people out there will put not so much wax, but they will PVA over the top of that to seal it, to get a good cure and everything on there. If they're down around 25 or 30%. We still have some people that like to use 25% of the high gloss additive, and they'll still blend a little bit of the surfacing agent in there because they feel a little bit more comfortable getting that tack-free finish. Preferably, I like going with the straight 904-001 because it's got a little bit of UV stabilizers in there. Everybody that's out there that's used it in the past knows when you add surfacing wax to it, you've got a tendency to see some yellowing on those parts, because it's a highly styrenated product. And once it's out in the sun and that UV is hitting it, it's got a tendency to want to change color a little bit. The 904-001 at a 50-50 blend with your exterior gel coat with no wax in there will give you that hard, completely sealed finish that's completely tack-free. And even in a shorter amount of time, it's actually, as it cures out, and once you start to buff on that, you'll notice if you got to go back and sand on it again, it's going to sand much harder because you generated some heat on that part and it can be cured out.
So this seems to be, a common technical call that we get, or questions regarding 904-001 seem to be pretty common. You mentioned going down below 25%. And Jody, if you want to unmute too and join in part of this discussion, it's a 904-001 is a very popular product. It's a great product. So let's talk first about what would be the advantages of using it over a wax or PVA, and then we'll jump into a couple more variations.
I prefer it too, especially if you're going back in and doing patch and repairs. over a patch aid or a patch booster, especially if you're getting into some of the brighter, more vibrant colors. I'm sure you've all seen where you get that, what they call a halo or a chemical line that comes around a patch that you're putting on there. You get that with a patch aid on there because of the resin and everything that's coming through there, and it kind of distorts that color right around that line a little bit. With the 904-001 and a 50-50 blend in your patch gel coat, and when I say patch gel coat, I'm talking just a straight exterior gel coat at 2% catalyst, and you feather it to the edges. When you come back and sand and buff that out, you will not see that chemical line that historically has been there from using a patch aid or a patch booster. There's just something in the chemical makeup when that product's put in there, and the way it cures and the way it wants to sand and buff out, that you can't sometimes, especially on those vibrant colors, get rid of that chemical line down there. But with the 904-001, I've seen it where it's almost eliminated completely, and it's very hard to pick up.
I know a common question that I get asked is, does the high gloss additive change the cure time of the gel coat?
It will actually speed it up somewhat because it is a promoted product, and it will, which is made to do, is to speed it up so it increases the time that you have to wait, or decreases the amount of time. Usually with a patch aid and patch booster in there, you're going to spray that on there. You got to wait for it to gel cure. You're looking at about, I don't know, 3, 4, maybe 5 hours, depending on where you're located, depending on humidity and temperature. With the 904-001, I've seen at times guys have been able to get back on that part within an hour. Depending, I mean, if it's 65 degrees, no, that's not going to happen. But if you're in a warm climate and you're spraying at around 80 degrees, 85 degrees, you could be sanding on that in about an hour.
Jody, any other additions as to why someone might want to choose 904-001?
Yes, one of the big benefits in a lot of the bright, bold colors and clears, a typical wax styrene blend, which most patching aid type products are, not only do you get that yellowing, but the wax can also change the color of the gel coat, or the look of the gel coat. When you sand it and polish it, it may look different than the surrounding gel coat. And in clears, that wax can cloud the gel coat, so you may never be able to thoroughly match it. So the 001 being clear and not having any wax in it, it doesn't contaminate it in that way. So you get a better looking patch, better match to the original color. And it will typically age better too, because there's no styrene in it. I should say there's no elevated styrene in it, like with the wax added products where it's just styrene and wax in there. So you're adding a good hit of styrene to it, which will cause premature yellowing, especially noticeable in whites and clears.
Okay. So when we're talking about using 904-001 in combination with gel coat, our technical data sheet gives a couple of variations. So if you're joining us and you haven't seen our technical data sheets, we'll explain where to find them at the end. But our technical data sheet mentions a couple of options. And specifically, Rob, the variations are to accommodate for hide. Can you talk to us a little bit about why we would shift our 904-001 ratio in usage with hide, or in consideration of hide?
Well, it's just the depth of the color. If you look at basically a standard white, no problem at all running it at a 50-50 blend, because the whites normally are anywhere from 18% up to a 22% pigment loading. And so you're going to get hide at 5 mils on a white. When you get into colors, especially the vibrant reds, yellows, blues, the pigment loading isn't quite as high. You're probably closer to maybe a 12 or 14%. So you've got to go heavier to get that cover and hide. So on a white, you can get away with 15 mils wet and you're still going to get cover and hide. On the more vibrant colors, you're probably going to need to be closer to 24 to 30 mils wet to be able to get the cover and hide. So you're going to build up more passes on the gel coat. It's going to be a little bit thicker. you don't need to go as heavy with the high gloss additive because you're building it up to a thicker mass. It's going to generate that cure and that gel that you're looking for in there. So you can get away with a 30-35% in there and still maintain your cover and hide.
So there is option and variability for our customers to make that determination as to what they need from the outcome of the products together.
Yes, and you're going to have to determine that based on who the gel coat manufacturer is, what color you're using, because there's going to be a difference between the pigment loading on a black versus a red versus a yellow. So the only way you're going to know what works best for you is, unfortunately, trial by error. There's no set pattern for certain colors, certain types. It's all going to depend on what you actually see on that part when you spray it.
Yeah. And you're welcome to call us and talk to us, and we'll help try to walk you through some of it or give you some examples that, we've had experience with. But okay. Anything else on the 904001 before I move us on? And if you have questions that we didn't answer about the 904001 or any of the other products we've talked about so far, don't worry, we've got some time still. Jody, Rob, anything else?
No, it also works great if you're doing because we didn't touch on that, but if you're doing a tooling repair, 904001, you can run it in your tooling gel coat to repair, do a patch on your molds. Works beautiful.
Perfect. So one of the things I want to just ask, we're going to look at and Allison, actually, if you want to pop up the polyester and vinyl ester comparison slide next, we can talk about this question that came in through the Q&A while we're looking at this. Jody and Rob have touched on most of these points as we've discussed. Vinyl ester is traditionally below the waterline, polyester above the waterline. But as we're looking at this, and as we've been talking about Duratec products, why would someone opt for a Duratec primer for plug or pattern or for hull reconstruction or construction? Why choose a Duratec product over some of the myriad of other products out there on the marketplace? Jody, Rob, either of you are welcome to join in that.
I'd say one of the things that, and there's some real niche markets that use these products that want very, very high quality. Frequently when somebody talks about a sanding product and a polyester, it's just a generic sanding gel coat, which is not going to surface cure. It's not going to spray and level and flow as well. So you end up with a very rough surface that you have to sand down, get rid of all that orange peel. So again, there's a lot of labor in that and a lot of sandpaper on the floor at the end of that process, when you can probably reduce the man hours and sandpaper by maybe 70% going with one of these primers. The difference in orange peel is dramatic, and you can reduce it more with some of the techniques we can help you with if that's the desire. And another angle on this, and another area, there are some other sanding polyester primers out there on the market that are more target the automotive industry, and people like to spray those. Automotive sanding primers tend to go on very thin. Ours, you can go up to 25, 30 mils, no problem. Those automotive products, you're only going to be able to spray them 5 to 8 mils thick. And now you have to sand that down, and you sand through, and you have to reapply and sand it again and reapply. Where if you've got to put a lot of material on there, you can build ours up and sand it right down. And that goes with either of those products. And both are used in the automotive industry for that reason, for the higher performance than what they get with their standard products. The marine industry is considered a much harsher environment than the left fender of your Toyota. So, so when they want to do show cars and really high-end renovations of cars, this is what they use typically. So the same thing goes with your boat. They're easier to use, more versatile, and cost savings.
And I'll just jump on that versatility. Rob has mentioned it. Jody has mentioned it as well. our products are epoxy compatible, polyester resin, vinyl ester resin compatible. And so that's very often the reason why they're chosen, is because they have that versatility with the laminate side, but then also with the top paint side. So whether you're working with a bottom paint or a gel coat, there's versatility across the build, across the laminate structure. Rob, did I miss anything else?
No, you didn't. I mean, the bottom line is this is what we do. And these primers make a great bridge between whatever your top coat, whatever type of gel coat, whatever you're putting over the top, and also to whether it's a fiberglass, whether it's an epoxy, whether it's Bondo, whether it's wood, doesn't make a difference. These will bond to it and make an excellent bridge for whatever you're going to top coat those parts with.
Perfect. Well, we're going to jump from having done our construction to doing our finishing. And Rob, will you just walk us through our AquaBuff compounds and polishes and tell everybody just a little bit about each one and when to choose which?
Yep, this is pretty straightforward. And what you have to remember with all three of these is that they're a concentrate. So a very little amount goes a very long way. As you can see on the screen, we've got three types. You're looking the one in the center where it says deep, that's the 1000F. That's if you've really got some major work that needs to be done. You've got some heavy oxidation, and you've got some deep scratches that you're trying to take out, because this product specifically is very aggressive. It's got a high grit fill in there. So it's even going to leave some scratches on there as well. But if you've got heavy oxidation and you've got some really bad scratches, especially in the molds, that you've got to knock down, and you don't really want to go back in there and have to resand the whole thing down and resurface it, but you want to take it out and get it in a better shape, you'd start with the 1000. The more common one that's used out industry-wide, whether it's on a finished product or on a mold, is the 1000W. That's got a lighter grit in there. That's good for some minimal oxidation. That will take out some minor scratches. That will clean up your mold, clean up your gel coat very well, and smooth it out and take out even some little rough spots or anything you have on there. You'd finish with the AquaBuff 2000, which is a compound polish blend. So if you've got your compound pad, your buffing pad on there, it'll take out the finer scratches and everything else, clean that up, and then you just switch over, put on your buffing pad or your polishing pad, come right back with the same product, and it'll give you a nice, clean, high shine, glossy finish on that part, and you're done. So the one thing to maintain, though, this stuff is highly, highly concentrated. I get phone calls all the time that people just lather this up on a boat, and you take a mist bottle with some water, you wet down your buffing pad, but a little bit on there. If you put too much, you're going to be buffing that thing for days to come to try to get that off. So,
have you had that conversation before, Rob?
Many times.
Once or twice, huh?
It literally, you put about a quarter size daub in the middle of your spot, and you can do a 3 foot by 3 foot section with there. And the key is just keep it wet.
So you touched on this, but kind of going back to the last question with the Duratec, why would someone, when there's lots of compounds and polishes on the marketplace, why would someone choose these products?
It's a water-based product, so there's no solvents or anything involved with these products. It's highly concentrated, so it's going to be a lower cost, and flat out, it just gives you an absolute beautiful finish. I've seen some of the higher end 3M products out there, and we've gone in with the AquaBuff products. And when these customers try them out, they prefer the AquaBuff over the more expensive 3M products. Mm-hmm. It eliminates the oxidation better, it reduces the scratches better, and it gives them a higher, glossier shine.
And a true shine without any of the solvents remaining on the surface.
Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So we've talked about our Duratec, we've talked about our StyreSafe, we've talked about AquaBuff. Those are the three product lines that we serve, and these are the ways we use some of them in the marine construction world. So we've left some time for Q&A. I know we have one question open and out there right now. If you have any others, please pop them in there and we'll start answering them. Then the last part will just show you where to find additional resources. We tend to go through these fast. These are product numbers that we know and love. You don't necessarily know and love them yet. You will love them. You will know them, just maybe not yet. So we'll give you some advice on where to find those. So it looks like the question that we have currently is, when should I use, this is going back to the Duratec line, when should I use the 1799 052, which is a fairing primer, versus the 1799 006, which is a vinyl ester surface primer? When should I use one versus the other?
The fairing primer is virtually both of them will do the same thing, but the fairing primer, depending on the part, if you've got a lot of dips, highs and lows on that part, you're going to have to take a long board to sand it, to smooth it out. The fairing primer can build to a high build. It's got a much higher viscosity. It can be sprayed on, rolled on, brushed on, but you can build that up and get to 40, 60, 80 mils if you've got to go that heavy without worrying about it sagging or sliding on you. The 1799-006 is more, once you get your part where it needs to be, it's a surface primer that's going to lay down a lot smoother than what you're going to see with the 1799. It's a higher solids, less filler product. So you can spray that on, you come back, you can sand that down 400, 600, whatever you want to take it to finish, and then you're ready to go. But that's mainly if your substrate is already where you want it and you don't have, like I said, you're not trying to fill in any gaps, you're not trying to fill in any lines, you're not trying to fill in where you've had to go back and maybe use a Dremel, a small Dremel on some parts. That's where the 052 would come in. So the difference is basically one is a high build. It's going to be a little bit easier to sand and level off. And then you can come back and you finish with the 1799 006. And then again, your gel coat, whatever, or tooling gel coat, whatever you're doing to finish it, whether it's a mold or an actual finished part.
Finished part itself. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Hopefully if that was your...
I'd like to add one thing on that. I've got customers that use the fairing primer. They'll come in, and if they're making a large part, they're making a plug or something, and frequently you're trying to, let's say you started with the Styrosafe resin, or which would be a good option. Now you've got a glass finish there. You've got the glass pattern on there. You can go right over the top of that with one of our fairing primers, and in about an hour's time, come back and longboard that off. As Rob said, you can build it up very, very thick, fast, and it will cure rapidly. And you can come back with a longboard and knock down all that rough surface and get it to the shape you want real quick. So they'll come in, do all that in the morning, come in after break, sand it down with a longboard, get the surface looking good, and then after lunch, spray it with one of our primers, whether the vinyl ester or the polyester, spray right over the top of that. Now they've got a good workable surface that's smooth and fair, and they don't have all the irregularities of that original surface with the glass pattern or lumps or roller marks or something like that. So you can, I always tell the customer, you can hide a lot of ugly really quick, and nobody is going to know what's down there. You didn't have to grind it off, fill it, do multiple applications. You can just hose this over the top and knock it down with a longboard or DA or whatever, but frequently with a longboard because they've got a large area that they need to work.
They need to work. Perfect. Thank you, guys. One of the other questions that has popped up, and I'm going to kind of jump off of what Jody just said with the glassed surface. What's the process, and is there a product recommendation when you are resurfacing a mold, or even our products kind of go interchangeably between the plug and pattern side and the actual boat itself. But if you're resurfacing something and it has standard tooling gel coat on it, or it has, you know, it's a boat surface and it has gel coat, what product should you use? What process should you take? Do we have any resources to help out with that?
Again, it's the same thing. It just depends on what the severity is of what you're repairing. If it's a mold and it's just the gel coat starting to wear, you've got maybe some hairline spider cracks, you can sand that down, get down through your crack, come right back. You can, and it's up to you again, whether you want to use a polyester, especially on a mold. I mean, if it's an open mold, you're not generating heat, it's going to be in excess of 175 up to 200 degrees. You can come right back with the polyester surfacing agent or surface primer and level that out, come back, sand it down about 400, 600, and then you can come back, either your choice of coming back with tooling gel coat with the 904-001 in there so it air cures, or what we prefer is come back with one of our top coats. And we've got a polyester or a vinyl ester. And you come back, and when you're done, you sand that again. Most guys want to take their mold, if they're going to be building repeatable parts on there, they'll sand that down to about 1,000 grit, polish it, buff it out, and you're good to go. And it's going to look like a brand spanking new mold. Same thing if you're repairing a hole on a boat. On a hole on a boat, I would prefer the vinyl ester version, but it's the same thing. You sand it down, you get everything taken care of, come back, you go with the 1799-006 primer, respray it. You're only going to put about maybe 15, 18 mils dry on there. And then again, just lightly sand that back down, maybe 400 grit. Start with 400. You can take it to 6, and then you're ready to go, ready to spray it with your gel coat of your choice with the 904-001 added in there.
Perfect. Well, Rob, I'm going to jump from your answer to that straight into another question that we had, which is about the top coats. Can Duratec top coats be used as a finishing top coat for exterior boat surfaces?
Yes.
I recommend it. Go ahead, Jody.
Yes, they can. Depending on what you want to do. The products are typically come in white. They can be tinted slightly, but if you're doing some larger thing, they can be color matched. So it's one of those things that, yes, it can, and it saves a lot of time. There are people that do it that way. It's not done as often, only because people don't know that they can do it. That's the big thing. So, and those top coats can be used in mold for finished parts too. So if you're making epoxy parts and you want a gel coat type finish, they work very well for that.
Now, Jody, should I be concerned though about vinyl ester and yellowing?
If you're using a vinyl ester top coat externally, yes. Okay. Polyester top coats will hold up, and we have versions that are even better at that. If somebody is really interested in that, we've got versions that have even better weathering than the standard products, just because these are going to be used outdoors and there's a specific need for an in mold epoxy coating that you want like a gel coat finish. Okay. It makes life much easier when infusing epoxy parts. So you can use the primer or the top coat. I've tested these top coats. I've had them in my hot tub for several years now, which is a very harsh environment for these top coats. They've held up fine, along with our other products. I have several different versions of our products applied in mold versions, or in mold applications and post applied. So they've been painted later, and really they've performed better than I expected over these several years. I got to say that it's been a successful test. It really proved to be beneficial to us and our customers, this testing. Absolutely. And our customers test them in the same way and give us the same feedback. So it's been confirmed through a couple of different routes that it works very well for that purpose.
Perfect. So Allison, if you'd pop up our resource slide. I know we have one more question. Esteban, I see your question. We're going to answer it. Give me just a second if you don't mind sticking with us. but we've hit about an hour, and we generally try to keep these to an hour. Our team's going to hang out here. So if you want to turn your video camera on and visit with us, you're welcome to do so. But Allison should have up a copy of our resources, the slide for our resource. And you can see on the left is an example of our data sheet. This happens to be for quick leveling top coat. All of our technical data sheets have the spec information that you need. Page 2 is an application guide, sometimes page 2 and page 3. And then the last page of our technical data sheets are frequently asked questions and troubleshooting. So they're tremendous resources. Like I said before, we move through these products pretty quickly. Those are wonderful resources for you, as are the application guides. An example is on the right. You can see the surfacing urethane tooling board. So we have application guides that cover multiple products and a process, or we have the specific technical data sheets on our website. So our website is a great resource. Our team is obviously very passionate about what we do and the products that we sell. We love, love, love talking to all of you. So whether you call, text, email, ask us to come visit in person, it's the best part of our job. You guys are the best part of our job. So just make sure that you know where to find those resources, and Allison's got a slide for all of our contact information. So we're at an hour. If you need to leave us, I completely understand. We're so grateful for your time. We'll stick around and answer a few more questions and visit with anybody who's inclined to stay and visit. Esteban, I hope you're still here. So Jody and Rob, Esteban's question is a little bit a shift, still within working with water and harsh chemistry. Jody, this actually touches on your jacuzzi a little bit. Esteban mentions that he has a client who manufactures jacuzzis, and what would we suggest to the client to get a better shine from the jacuzzis coming out of the mold? Esteban, we may need a few more details. I don't know if you are still here on the call. Yep, looks like you are. So we may need to ask you for a few more questions. Okay. Oh, you read my mind. Customer uses ISO NPG gel coat for the jacuzzis, and it's a polyester tooling gel coat. Jody, Rob, I know you both have had experience with this. Any advice for getting, really fantastic jacuzzi parts out of the mold?
So he's looking for a better shine off the mold is what we're talking about.
Yes. A better shine on the jacuzzi parts after they come out of the mold.
Man, but it all starts with the mold. So depending on what kind of shine you have on that mold, that's where you're going to need to pull it from. I don't know what shape the molds are in, or what. I know we've even had some molds out there for jacuzzis that are metal molds. So we can look at take the AquaBuff line. Maybe they just need to be compounded and buffed back out and polished back up to bring up the shine. If the gel coat, if they're made of tooling gel coat that's on there and they're fiberglass molds and they're starting to get dull, then what we may want to look at is sanding those down and resurfacing those, come back with our top coats, which is going to give you a higher gloss, a higher shine. And the higher the shine on your mold, the higher the shine you're going to get off the parts you're pulling.
And that might also be a great option for him to use the high gloss additive with that tooling gel coat to really elevate the shine that's coming out of there.
Would that be on the mold, not the part itself? Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I might have said that wrong. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what I meant. Esteban, I'm hoping that answered your question. It looks like, if not, just pop another question back in there. We'll address it. Jody?
And I'll also add that frequently the use of a vinyl ester top coat, jacuzzi operations, usually they're rather high production. So the molds are being cycled very rapidly, and a vinyl ester top coat for a tooling surface is going to hold its gloss longer than a polyester product will. So that may give an advantage there, so that you can get more parts off it that have a higher gloss. You can attain a slightly higher gloss, and it will hold that gloss longer.
Perfect. Thank you, Jody. Thank you, Rob. Let's see. Oh, that seems to have answered Esteban's questions. You're welcome. We're so glad you asked some questions for us to answer. All right. It doesn't look like there are any other questions, so we're going to let you all go. Again, thank you so much for your time. Rob, Jody, thank you for joining me today on the webinar. Allison, as usual, thank you for your help. Please feel free to reach out to us at any time. We welcome your questions, comments, and certainly a chance to come see what you're doing. You make really incredible things. Thank you all. Take care.
Bye.